And it is the last lesson of Unit 2. We are on 2.13, interpreting the remainder. We've been working on partial quotient, and today we're going to solve division number stories, practice interpreting those remainders. We're also going to perform operations with multi-digit whole numbers. Let's go. As always, vocabulary. Just a reminder, dividend, that's the number that is being divided. Divisor, that's the number doing the division. Quotient is your answer, and remainder is the amount that is left over. As always, you can go back to other lessons and listen to more in-depth conversations about those words, but this is a review day. This is the last lesson. We've talked about these. You can always pause to read those. Let's warm up with this math story problem, and it is involving division. So we will be using partial quotient to solve this. A roller coaster holds 30 people. There are 252 people waiting in line. How many times will the roller coaster need to run for all 252 people to get a ride? I'm going to start off by using cubes. I see that it holds 30 people. There are 252 people waiting in line. My question, how many times will the roller coaster need to run for all 252 people to get a ride? So I've underlined the question here, but I really want to understand it. I want to make sure that I know what it's asking me. It says, how many times will it need to run for all 250 people to get a ride? Okay. So I know that every single person needs to ride. So again, this lesson is all about interpreting the remainder. So when I'm looking at a question like this, I want to ask myself, if there is a remainder, what do I need to do with it? Do I need to ignore it? Do I need to report it as like a fraction, as part of something? Or do I need to report it by rounding up my whole number? And if I'm thinking about a roller coaster, I know that if I want all 252 and there's a leftover, that means those people didn't get on any of the full roller coasters. So they need to be able to ride. And I can't just have half of my roller coaster going through one time. So for this one, if I have a remainder, I'm probably going to need to round my answer up in the end. And you always want to think it through. Anytime you have a question, you want to talk about it. And even just making notes for yourself to figure out what exactly do you need to do. Because this question is not asking what is 252 divided by 30. It's asking how many times can this roller coaster run to get all those people through. So when you have a question like this, you want to create a model. And there is no one correct model for a problem. There are so many different ways and different models that can represent it. So on a slate or on a piece of paper, I want you to create a mathematical model for that math message and how you would solve it. What do you think you would do? So here is an example. Okay. I know that each roller coaster, each time it holds 30 people. So I'm going to draw circles, and for each one, I put a 30 in there. And you can see that I've got 8 of them, because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 roller coasters equals 120, 8 equals 240 total. But there's 12 more people that need to ride. So 8 full roller coaster cars is 240 people. There's 12 people left over. That'll get us to the 252. Your drawing might look different than mine, okay? So this model, it models the problem by breaking it up into those multiples of 30. 30 is the number that we were given, and that's the multiples that we were using. Could you have done a different way? 100%, okay? This model here represents the division problem we're doing. 252 divided by 30 equals T for times. How many times does it need to run? Does this help you think about the remainder? And maybe ask yourself, how does it help you think of the remainder? This one helped me think of the remainder because it shows me that there's a 12 there. So different models are serving different purposes. Sometimes models can help you organize the information in the problem. Some help you decide what operations you need to use. Others can help you interpret the solution in the context that you're using. Like this one for me helps me understand, all right, I'm taking 250 and I'm dividing it into groups of 30, which then leads me to this model, which helps me visually understand that there is a remainder. So we see that 252 divided by 30, that actually equals 8 with a remainder of 2. And we got that from that visual model that I created with the circles. So we see 8 times with a remainder of 2. But remember, if we go back to that question again, a roller coaster holds 30 people. There are 252 people waiting in line. Here's the part. How many times will a roller coaster need to run for all 252 people to get a ride? Is it 8 times? If so, what are we going to tell these 12 people? Do we just say like, we're only going to have half of the roller coaster go? Remember I said you can't do that. There are some times that you can represent it with a fraction. There are sometimes you ignore it. And there are sometimes that you have to round the number up. When I'm looking at a question like this and I'm thinking about it's people needing to get a ride on the roller coaster, I can't tell these 12 people, sorry, you have to go home. I can't cut the roller coaster in half. I can't say that, well, it's only going to go 8.5 times. I'd have to say, well, it's going to go 8 times that completely full, and then it's going to go one more time with only 12 people on there. So my answer is actually going to round up to 9. My answer to how many times is going to be 9 times. The roller coaster will need to run 9 times to give all 252 people a ride. When you are doing problem solving, such as that one, there is all kinds of different ways. If you notice on here, we need to organize the information. We need to play around with the information. We need to figure out what type of math is going to help us. We need to check our answer as we work, not just at the end. And we need to understand the problem. I did not say step 1, step 2, step 3, because as you see with these arrows, they go in all kinds of different directions. Maybe we start with understanding the problem. Okay, retelling the problem in our own words, figuring out what we need to find, and then we play around with the information. Maybe I draw a picture, and then maybe I start to organize it in a different way. And then as I'm working, I'm checking it, and then I figure out what kind of math. And then maybe I go back to see, do I understand that problem still? Is there something that I need to imagine with this problem? Do I need to think about what does this question actually ask me? And then you go back and play with the math again, maybe by drawing a picture, writing in the number model, and you keep going until you have completed the problem solving. So there is no step 1, step 2 for problem solving, but there are 5 different parts that you can go back and forth between. The way I'm doing it might be different than the way you're solving it. As long as we're using these different parts, we're on the right track. So your job now is to try some out on your own. We've got page 68, and we see number 1 says basketballs are on sale for $12, including tax. How many basketballs can the gym teacher buy with $40? So you don't have to worry about any other tax. It's already included in this $12. So here you need to make a mathematical model. Whichever model works best for you in your thinking. Maybe you only use numbers. Maybe you draw pictures. Maybe use tally marks. Here's where you put the whole quotient, and here's where you put the remainder. And then you're going to answer, you're going to reflect, what does that remainder represent? What does the remainder mean? So for number 1, you'd be asking yourself, well, does this mean money? Does this mean basketballs? Does this mean tax? Does this mean teachers? Then you're going to come down here to where the answer is, and it says the gym teacher can buy blank basketballs. Circle what you're doing with that remainder. Remember, are you ignoring it, or are you rounding that quotient up? And I've said in the future we might think about using it as part, but right now we're just either ignoring it or rounding it up. And why? Why would you do either one? If you choose to ignore it, Tell me why. If you choose to round up your answer, tell me why. Doing the same thing for number 2. You're organizing a trip to a museum for 110 students, teachers, and parents, so people. If each bus can seat 25 people, how many buses do we need? Keeping that in mind too, you're going to do another mathematical model, quotient, remainder. What's that remainder represent? Is it buses, people, money, time? You need how many buses? Because remember, the question is how many buses do you need? And then tell me, do you ignore or round up the quotient? And then number 3, Mrs. Maxwell has 60 pence to pass out to her class. There are 27 students in her class. How many pens will each student get if everyone is given a fair share? That means equal amount. Draw your picture, write out your number model, however you choose to do the mathematical model. Quotient, remainder, what's it represent? Is it pens, students, teachers, money? And then tell me how many pens will each student get? And did we ignore that remainder, or did we round the remainder up? Or round the quotient up with that remainder? And then look back at problems 1 through 3, choose one of your mathematical models and explain how it helped you solve that problem. This is a reflection part, okay? This is a reflection part. You are telling me or telling yourself what you chose to do. How did that help you? And so then you'll pause. You'll pause the video now and come back and let's check our work together. Okay, so hopefully you paused and you are ready to check at least number 1. Let's check that out together. Here's an example of a mathematical model. Again, yours did not have to look like this, but you see that he has drawn out 3 balls with $12 written in the middle of each one. And we see that 12 times 3 was 36. And so we have $4 left over. So the answer to this question is 40 divided by 12 is 3 with a remainder of 4. And so the remainder represents that there are $4 left over. The gym teacher can buy 3 basketballs. We have to ignore that remainder because we only have $4. That $4 can't get us anything, and we can't buy part of a basketball. We can't just say, hey, will you round this up and give me 4 instead? So we only have enough money for 3, and you're going to get $4 and change. So again, the $4 left over isn't enough to buy another basketball. Number 2, whoops, I deleted the wrong thing. Number 2, oh gosh, let me pause and fix this. Okay, I cannot get it back, so I've opened up the digital version on the Everyday Math site, so you can see here, it's the same thing, but just different view. They have drawn out pictures, and they see that 25 people are on each bus, so they drew out some representations for a bus. So we see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 buses. That represents 100. And then, but we know we have 110 total, so they drew 1 more bus to give those 10 people. So we know that 110 divided by 25 is going to be 4 with a remainder of 10, and you can see that from this image here. And the 10 represents the number of people remaining after the 4 buses are filled. But we need everybody. We need everybody to go. So we're going to have to round that quotient up and have 5 buses total. And then for number 3, Mrs. Maxwell has 60 pens. She has 27 students. So we're just taking 60 divided by 27. And we get the answer of 2 with a remainder of 6. There are 6 pens left over. Each kid can only get 2 pens because we're not going to give 6 kids 3 pens. So we would just ignore that. 6 pens are left over. That's not enough to give each person 1 more pen. So each kid would get 2 pens. It concludes lesson 2.13, interpreting the remainder. Like I said, this is our last lesson. We are going to actually next week spend 1 day reviewing multiplication, 1 day reviewing division, and then we will have a Unit 2 assessment now that we've come to the end. Now I would like you to check out your independent work for 2.13. Enjoy.